Hello and welcome to Daddy Issues, the podcast where we talk about father and son relationships in popular media that make us emotional. It could be a happy emotion, it could be a sad emotion, it could be any... What's your favourite emotion, Dave?
That's
I've
what
never
I thought. Experienced one.
You've never experienced an emotion, not one.
No, I'm hoping this will be the exercise that allows me to truly experience human emotions for the first time.
Wow, you're just like Spock. He's got daddy issues.
I am just like Spock, and I think that's why I relate to Superman so much, because I think I know the truth, the hidden truth of my existence is that I'm from another planet.
That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah.
How are you doing? You alright?
Yeah, apart from yearning for my home world, yeah, I'm doing pretty good. It's a miserable day outside, so it's nice to be. It's nice to be doing something nice and shiny on the inside.
Yes, yeah. I've got a weird thing to tell you that I saved for us to start recording before.
Okay.
Right. So last night it was Children in Need, right? Which is, if we have international listeners, Children in Need is like, international listeners, the 5 people, including my dad, who listen to this. Dad, just in case you don't know what Children in Need is, it's a big British charity show that they do every year on TV, and lots of celebrities get involved, and they'll do funny skits or videos. Like Andy Murray and Peter Crouch did one last night. It was brilliant. They were really funny. But my general reaction to Children in Need goes along the same line as my stepdad, which was, I think on the one show, they said, it's Children in Need tomorrow night. And my stepdad went, fuck off. But we watched it anyway, because we always end up watching it in my house. But we got very drunk, and I am very hungover. So the more drunk we got, the more Children in Need improved over time. You might not be surprised to know. But there was a very emotional video about young children with kidney disorders. And I was so drunk that as I watched this, I just went on my computer and typed away. And I woke up this morning and I looked at my computer. I was like, what did I do last night? And firstly, I made a lot of Instagram stories that I'm not proud of. But secondly, I registered myself as a living kidney donor. So...
And who says nothing positive ever comes out of drinking?
So I might get an email on Monday from Southmead Hospital in Bristol, who I emailed to say I'd like to donate my kidney. Saying, okay, well, what are you doing next week? Because we can probably fit you into...
We'll probably get you in, yeah. Can never have too many kidneys.
Well, yes, this is true. So, yeah, that was an interesting...
Well, good for you. Like, that was a daddy issues moment in itself, in drinking heavily with your stepdad.
Yes.
And it resulted in a true expression of possibly clouded altruism.
There was a lot...
like the cider.
Yeah, for sure, yeah. There was a lot of, when we were sober, how much do you want to donate this year? I don't know, it's been a tough year, do we have enough money? But as the night got on, we ended up donating quite a lot, because once you're drunk, it becomes easy to donate, so...
You become more generous when you've been drinking,
Yes, that's true. But for daddy issues, today, we wanted to do something a little bit different, because normally we just do a movie, or we do a TV show, but this is a David Bryan special episode where Dave was like, I want to do Real Steel with Hugh Jackman, and then last night at 11:30 p.m, whilst I am donating my kidney online, Dave comes up with a new idea. What did you decide you wanted to do, Dave?
Well, I posed you a challenge, or perhaps wasn't particularly challenging, but I posed you a question and asked you to come up with a list of songs that remind you of your relationships with your father and your stepfather. And I thought that I could come up with loads. So I thought we'll probably keep it to 10, and otherwise we don't want to get crazy, and we can talk about, we can like share each other's lists and talk about them. And then I spent all night panicking because I can only really think of a few. So today I think we're just going to talk about a few, but I think that there's going to be some good stuff in there.
Oh yeah, for sure. So what I have done with my song selection is I've gone for songs for which I have a strong memory attached to my father, rather than like the song makes me feel something about my father-son relationship. It's more like these are songs that I have specific memories attached to. But how did you go about selecting your songs?
I did exactly the same thing. All of these are songs that just have a memory attached to them, or songs that I recall hearing a lot when I was of an age where the only music I heard was the music that my dad was playing.
Yes.
So and I don't so in some cases I don't really listen to this kind of music, but whenever I hear it or I hear the artist, my dad is the first person that I think of. So it was interesting to try and whittle this down to a few songs, and then try and figure out which ones did strike the most of a memory in me, and then researching them deeper, finding actually interesting links to fatherhood and some other aspects that do mirror in my dad and me and my dad. So it was kind of quite a cathartic experience.
Okay, I have a feeling that we are going to go down two different highways with our songs, so I'm excited. So the way we thought we'd do it is you'll share a song first. We've got 3 songs each. You'll share one, we'll listen to it, then we'll discuss it and discuss the memory. Because the podcast will be on YouTube, we can't show that much of the song without being copyrighted, but we're gonna fucking try and get some of it in there and just see what happens. But you'll do one, we'll listen to it and then discuss it, then I'll do one, and then we'll kind of go back and forth, 3 songs each, and and see how we go. So David Bryan, air drum roll please, because I don't want to mess up the microphone. What is your first Daddy Issues song choice?
My first choice is going to be Wonder Boy by the Kinks.
Ooh, okay. To YouTube. So that is the Kinks, of course.
Of course.
Classic band. Wonder Boy, very reminiscent of mid-Beatles. You know, like that period of the Beatles that I'm not super fond of, where they leave the awesome rock and roll stuff behind, and then they start using sitars and stuff like that.
It's kind of like just before the Beatles got to sitars and the Baba Vagita and stuff like that.
Yes.
But they left behind the pumpy rock and roll, and they were doing a bit more lighter fare.
Yeah.
But
why did you choose Wonder Boy? It's a great song.
It's a great song. It's funny actually. It has quite a strong connection to my dad, but only very recently, and only really because of me.
Okay.
So
God,
my dad turned
arrogant,
50.
this one.
That's fine. I can be arrogant. My dad turned 50. I guess about 6 years ago, and my girlfriend and I at the time decided to make a video for him by going to see all of our relatives and family and getting them to talk about him, and then I cut them all into a video with music. And something I managed to get hold of from my granddad was footage that he had filmed of my dad when he was a kid.
Wow.
So I cut all that in, and I wanted to get some music from around that era to play behind my dad, like as a baby in a crib, and then there's and some other bits and bobs. And this was the song that I landed on. I've been into the Kinks anyway, and I was again listening to kind of music that I already owned around that time, and this song kind of leapt out at me. So in my mind now, whenever I hear this song, it's particularly attributed to the one shot of this film that I made of my dad as a blonde-haired 10-year-old riding around the garden on his bicycle, just smiling at the camera, and I think. Yeah, I find that very, very evocative now. The title of the song as well, Wonder Boy, and those things line up properly. And then in researching it now, I never really thought about the lyrics much, apart from the beginning, Wonder Boy, life's just begun. And again, it's there he is in front of me in my mind's eye and in this video as a young man. But now in looking into it and reading it, I wasn't able to find any backstory into why it was written, what it was written about. I know it was written by Ray Davies and recorded and released in 1968. but just from my interpretation of the lyrics, it sounds like a father talking to a new son about the world and about life, and just looking at some of the lyrics now, it's kind of like this uplifting story of dream and don't sigh, don't groan, life is only what you wonder. And it makes me feel like it was encouraging. It's encouraging of a son to be imaginative and go out into the world and have fun and experience things, and as well as just the general tone of the song, I do find it very uplifting, and now I think it will forever be something that I attach to my dad.
Perfect. I don't even know if we need to say any more on the track than that. I think you've given a perfect
Had you heard it before we just listened to it?
I am a big fan of about 5 Kinks songs. And I would say there are like 5 Kinks songs that I absolutely love and will listen to all the time, and then just never touch their discography.
Yeah.
So, like, Wonder Boy is one of those ones that I haven't really listened to, other than the Tenacious D song, Wonder Boy.
It's not a cover.
No, it's not. It's definitely not.
No.
But yeah, the Kinks. The Kinks are a band that have a strong connection to my dad as well, for a slightly different reason, which I'll get into after we listen to my first song, which I am going to share with you now. My first song is Boney Maroney by Larry Williams.
And another classy fade out.
Oh yeah. I love that song. I think it's a great song.
I love it too. Now, I'd never heard it before. I'd never even heard of Larry Williams before. But
what you're gonna love about Boney Maroney and Larry Williams is he seems to have a bit of a theme. Larry Williams. The song he released before Boney Maroney is called Short Fat Fanny, and he's American, right? Fanny means something different over there. And also, it's a woman's name.
So childish.
Yeah, but the song after Boney Maroney is Dizzy Miss Lizzy, because Larry Williams seems to love this, can I get the song titles to rhyme? And like, it's all just very fun, very upbeat, very energetic. What an awesome track.
That is great. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. So, the reason that this one reminds me of my dad is because after my parents divorced, my dad embraced his lifelong dream of just becoming a professional musician, because he'd always played in bands, like, since he was a teenager. And he was in, like, various rock bands, and that's how we met my mum to begin with, was that he was the bassist, which is, of course, the coolest and sexiest instrument to play. And he was a bassist in a rock band, and my mum was in the audience and was like, hello. And then they got married and had me, and then the problem being, of course, that when you're trying to support a family, your dreams of rock stardom have to go on hold somewhat. And so my dad would go and do gigs in the evening or on the weekends, but during the day he had to do, like, accountant work and, like, working for banks and that kind of not the exciting rock life that he dreamed of. No. So when my parents,
crushing, mind-numbing stuff.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So when my parents got divorced, it was like, well, I'm just going to go and become a musician full time, which is what he did, and that was his career for like 25, 30 years. But it also meant that from the age of like 4 until I went to university and stuff, if I went to see my dad on a time that he was working, or if I went to stay with him during the summer, especially during the summer, it would be while he is staying in a certain location and performing every night. And So a lot of my summers were spent in Cornwall or in Wales or one of these holiday tourist destinations where my dad would be performing, and then I would go and see him perform every night, and then we'd hang out during the day, and then we'd be down by the beach and stuff because his job was to be in these areas. And then he spent a lot of time playing abroad. So I went to see him during the summer season in Mallorca. But then there were other times where he was just gone for 3 to 6 months. He was just in Dubai performing and Abu Dhabi performing for months at a time, and 10-year-old Dominic isn't flying from the villages of Somerset to Abu Dhabi to go and see Dad, right? So it's a long time where Dad is just gone. But the music that he performed is one of the things that I always carry with me, and one of the things that very much has influenced my taste in music, and why a lot of girlfriends that I have will be like, why do you solely listen to rock and roll from the 1950s? And it's because this is the music that I literally grew up with, because Dad would be playing the summer season, but the summer season would include some of the hits from this year for the kids to dance to, but then things for their grandparents who are taking them on these summer holidays. The grandparents want to, my grandparents always said to Dad, why don't you play Blue Suede Shoes by Elvis Presley? I think that's a perfect song. And Dad was like, I don't want to do Blue Suede Shoes because my grandparents wanted him to do it. But for me, Boney Maroney is the song that reminds me of my dad performing, because he performed in a duo with what would have been my stepmom at the time, and normally she played the keyboard and sang, and Dad would play guitar and do backup vocals. But Boney Maroney was one of the ones where Dad did the vocals and everything, and played guitar and stuff. And so for me, this is my dad's pretty fucking cool.
Hell yeah! Talking about people not getting why you only listen to rock and roll from the 50s. That is the coolest genre in the coolest time period of music.
Yes.
I just don't think there is a cooler time in music history, especially in America. I'm very happy that you've brought this into my life. A lot of my joy comes from finding music I've never heard before, and yeah, you've done me a great favor then. It's great. I loved. I don't think I've ever met your dad. I've definitely seen photos, so I'm trying to picture him on stage playing guitar and singing Boney Maroney, and that makes me smile. I for one day I'd love to see him perform.
Oh, yes. Yeah, he doesn't perform as much anymore, because the problem that he had eventually was that he wasn't performing the music that he wanted to perform. He was performing what was demanded by, what are the audiences going to want? And it ended up becoming a compromise of, do I want to do Ed Sheeran now that Ed Sheeran is popular? And Dad did Ed Sheeran, and it went down pretty damn well. But it's not necessarily what he's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not as artistically satisfying.
No, but what is very artistically satisfying are my memories, which I haven't included, but this is one of my honourable mentions, is just the discography of ZZ Top, which is a big connection that I have with Dad, especially Give Me All Your Lovin' by ZZ Top or Legs by ZZ Top, because I remember one day I went down to visit my dad, and he said, I've got a DVD for us to watch. I'm like, okay, what is it? Is there a new Star Wars movie, or what is it? And he went, no, it's all of the MTV music videos ever recorded by ZZ Top, and we're going to sit there and we're going to watch it. And so we did, and it was just the best time, because ZZ Top are one of those bands, along with Michael Jackson, that just revolutionized music videos and what music videos could be, because they're just larger than life, and ZZ Top are just the coolest fucking band in the world. But one of the reasons they're so cool is that they have guitars and bass guitars that spin.
They spin.
So they'll be playing Give Me All Your Lovin', and then midway through the guitar solo, in synchronicity, the guitarist and the bass player will both spin their guitars 360 degrees on an
amazing.
axle, right? And so the guitar will swoop around in a circle. So you do your guitar riff, you spin the guitar, you catch it, and you both keep playing, and it looks fucking awesome.
That does sound fucking cool. That's like the precursor to the busted synchronized that's what I go to school for jump. You know what I mean?
Don't you ever compare the ZZ Top spinning guitar to
Yeah, I mean
Busted.
the spinning guitars of ZZ Top is kind of cool, I guess, but I mean Busted were,
God
one of the greatest
damn it.
bands in history.
But the reason I bring
Can I
up...
just quickly go on record and say that I don't mean that?
Yeah,
And that was
he
sarcasm.
does.
I hope
He
that
does.
came across.
He wants to go to that year 3000 where we all live underwater or whatever that song was.
Not much has changed, but we do live underwater, which is quite a change.
That is a reasonably large change. But the reason I bring up ZZ Top and not Busted is that when I was about 15, I think, my dad said, okay, we're building a spinning guitar. So my dad got like an old, an expensive guitar, just like a regular one that you could get not from Argos, but something like that. Then he drilled into the back of it, built a spinning device with something to rotate the guitar on, with a tennis ball on the back so that the guitar doesn't rub against the wooden platform that it's up against. And we built the spinning guitar, then we decorated it in black and white zebra stripes, and then Dad went, oh, we need to get some writing on it. What should we have written on the guitar? So I went upstairs and I went through my Spider-Man comics, and there's a comic of so it's Spider-Man fighting Venom, and me and my dad loved the lettering on the sound effect Yarg, where Spider-Man has like punched Venom or something, or he's set on fire and Venom goes Yarg. This is Yaargh. And so me and Dad stenciled Yarg on the spinning guitar. And then he went and used it live. And so he'd be playing, and then the guitar solo would come. He could just spin his guitar and keep playing. It's fucking awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so me and my friend Arthur, who lived very close to my dad, would go to watch him play, and just be like, spin the guitar, because it was just the coolest thing.
That is very cool. I think we're gonna notice a disparity here between the coolness of our dads.
I don't think that's true. But yes, that is that's a great memory. Right, it's your turn now, Dave. What is your
it's
next
me.
song?
My next pick is gonna be Silver Thunderbird by Mark Cohn from the self-titled album Mark Cohn of 1991.
Great.
Let's listen to it.
Let's listen to it.
Watched it coming up Winslow down South Park Boulevard. It was looking good from tail to hood.
A few panpipes there at the end, got to get those in.
Gotta get a panpipe. No panpipe, no deal. That's what I always say.
Yeah, it's got some great 90s tropes in there with the panpipes and that kind of choir going on in the background.
Yeah, great song. So why did you go for this one? It's a very father and son. It's obviously, just by its nature, it's a very father and son
It is,
song.
yeah. This whole album, if I was to pick it, if there's one album that I attribute to my dad, it's this one, because he used to listen to it all the time while I was growing up, and I grew to like it too. And then when I grew to really start to like my own kinds of music, I then would try and find music anywhere that I could get my hands on it. So I would go through his CD collection, go through my mum's CD collection, and this was the only one of his that I actually found had any kind of playback value, so anyone that really struck me. And then over the years I've listened to it on and off, and this song is the one that always kind of prodded me, like in my gut. And just, it's funny actually, listening to this song just then, I was starting to get a bit emotional then, because even though I've been listening to it just while we've been preparing for this recording, I was kind of like reading at the same time and looking at lyrics and trying to read background on the song and stuff, but then just sitting here and listening to it properly, like, it does stir something in me.
Yeah.
And again, it, like you said, it has that very obvious motif of a father and son. And the guy Mark Cohn, he said he wrote it about his dad as kind of like a form of therapy, because his dad died when he was 12, and he didn't really ever really know him. He was one of those kind of like traveling salesman types of like sort of mid 20th century America, who would go to work every single day, 7 days a week, and toil, and when he came home it would be late, but the family would still really struggle. He couldn't really provide for them, and I'm not sure why, but yeah, obviously he passes away while the writer is still young. So it's kind of tragic, but you can really feel that it's drawing from real life. Like it's not fiction. It feels very real. There's all these details, and obviously like the car, the Silver Thunderbird, it's quite an evocative vehicle in itself and in its shape, and I kind of see myself in in Mark Cohn's role in the song, of watching his dad come and go in this car, and he doesn't really know where he's going. Like when you're that age, you don't really know what your parents do during the day while you're at school. There's like, you see them in the morning and then they go off to do their thing and you do yours, and when you come back, you're back home again, and that's family time. But it's kind of, I always imagine he looks at his dad as if he's watching Batman get in the Batmobile.
Yeah, well, this is something that we've spoken about before, that you can really feel in this song. Well, we've spoken before about the way that when you are young, you look up and idolize your parents and your father as being more than just another adult. We've spoken on previous episodes of that way of when you eventually discover that your parents are fallible, because so much of your childhood is spent thinking, your parents, firstly, they're always right about everything. And also they are more than they're more than man. And in this song, especially in that first verse where he's saying the car looks like the Batmobile, basically.
Yeah.
The car looks like the Batmobile, and my dad is driving the car. Which really invokes that idea that he sees his father as a superhero, as more than well,
it's like the car is the heroic feature. Like he sees the car, and the car looks like the Batmobile, but yet, holy shit, that's my dad driving it. And kind of therefore that makes him great. And like you say, going through that period in your life where you get to realize that your parents are, well, especially in our case, finding out that your dad, who is your role model, is also human and fallible, like you say, and isn't always right about everything. But then try to imagine being 12 years old and then he's gone. You don't get to become an adult and then almost get to see your dad as a peer and appreciate them as a human being. You're still, like in his mind, his dad will always be that sort of superhero figure, that bit larger than life character, and only in retrospect did he learn that he wasn't successful at anything. He struggled all of his life, and then presumably died quite young. It's just that one's quite an emotional one, but like I say, that whole album kind of always harks me back to him, and it's just in going through it recently that you can't ignore those kind of those not similarities, but they are. It's appropriate for our conversation.
Well, let's change gear and go for something.
Let's bring it up. You've got
that has
something to bring it up.
Nothing to do with fathers and sons at all.
Okay, good.
My next pick is going to be "Needy Girl" by Chromeo.
Oh shit! Okay.
All right, I love that song.
That was great. That was fun.
Yeah,
I'm so glad that you're here to bring us back up after I If I bring the mood down a bit with all my somber, emotional shit, you
Just
bring the
wait,
funk.
just wait till we get on to track number 3. But for the moment, let's stick with "Need a Girl" by Chromeo. You may have noticed I'm wearing one of my Chromeo t-shirts today.
One of them.
Yeah, I
How
have
many?
3.
So you're a fan.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, Chromeo have been my favourite band for a long time. I don't necessarily want to get too much into Chromeo because when we eventually do your music podcast, that you are cooking up one of these days, and when he invites me on as a guest, ladies and gentlemen, which he goddamn better do, I'm going to talk about Chromeo a lot when we get to that.
Good.
The reason that this song, for me, has that connection to my dad, is that when I was... Oh, there's a goddamn tractor. We're recording tractor.
I can't hear no tractor.
Oh, well, good. But it's
That's what happens when you live in Somerset, you see. There's tractors everywhere.
Goddamn
Everyone's got a car and a tractor.
Is that there's a real tractor infestation in these parts.
In these parts?
Around here, around Somerset. When I was... from when I was about 11, my dad moved to a place called Bridgewater, which you may not have heard of, and you're very lucky if you haven't, because Bridgewater is not a particularly nice place. And at that point, it used to be even worse than it currently is, because they had a big plastic smelting factory where you would drive into town and all you could smell was toxic fumes. And it was... Bridgewater, it's not the greatest place in the world, but the most annoying thing was that it's like an hour away from where I lived with my mum. So every Sunday, my dad would have to drive from his house in Bridgewater 1 hour to come pick me up, and then 1 hour to take me home. Then on Monday, back to his house. Then on Monday morning, he would have to drive 1 hour to drive me to school, and then another hour to drive himself back home again. So there's a lot of, and that's every week, right? So my dad's doing like 4 hours driving a week just to pick me up and drop me off. Which, ladies and gentlemen, that is dedication there. I mean, like, you might say, oh yeah, but that's the things that every dad should do, but they didn't have kids like me. And for
props, massive props.
Yes,
for that.
yeah, absolutely. But because it was like an hour drive to school, we'd have to wake up pretty early in order to get me into school on time. So we'd wake up, we'd have breakfast, and while we'd have breakfast, we'd have like Channel 4 in the morning on. And I don't know what's on in the morning on Channel 4 anymore, but back then, this is 15 years ago, I'm not that old, it was like music videos for teenagers, essentially. It was kind of like, and then they'd show The Simpsons and, just like stuff in the morning. And we would do this every week, but I can still remember the first time I ever saw the video for Need a Girl by Chromeo at my dad's house that Monday morning, because it fucking blew my mind. Because at this point, like, pop music, there's I don't know, by this point maybe Rihanna is just on the scene with Ponder Replay or Shut Up and Drive, or something like that, like early Rihanna. But pop music, it wasn't really anything. There was nothing about popular music that had like any sense of identity, and the kind of music that I listened to at the time, which we'll see very much in song number 3, was like heavier rock stuff. And so Chromeo appeared just before I started getting into funk properly, and this one song came in, and I remember the first time I heard it, because after I heard it that one time, I didn't see what the band was called, I didn't see what the song was called. All I knew was that I had the bass line stuck in my head for 2 years. And for 2 years, I was thinking, what was that song? What was that song that me and my dad saw and were like, whoa? But then could never find again, because there wasn't Spotify. Like, YouTube barely existed back at that point, and there was no way to find the song again after it had been shown. So it was 2 years of going, what was that goddamn song? And after 2 years, when Google was really up and running, let me tell you, there was Google, there was MySpace, YouTube had appeared, as had YouPorn, RedTube, whatever it was, but we're not getting into that now because we're talking about our dads.
Tangent.
Yeah, I found the song again after like 2 years. And I found it, and it was like, this is the song. But then it was just one track, and I lost them again until I went to university and lived with someone called David Bryan, where once again I was like, oh, what was that song? And then this time, when I found it, they had a back catalogue, and suddenly I had waited long enough for them to become a favourite band, right? Because this song was something that connected to me in a very strong way, but because the band wasn't there, they only had the one track like on an EP. It was an album, but it didn't really chart or anything. When I discovered them a few years later, they had out Fancy Footwork, which is the t-shirt that I'm wearing now, and it was like enough for them to become like a favorite band. And then after I discovered them, I took it back to my dad. And it was, I found them, listen to this.
Yeah.
And then Chromeo is something that I've shared with Dad and listened to, and that he maybe not Needy Girl so much necessarily. But as I said, my dad is a bass player, and it's difficult to listen to Chromeo playing bass and not go, yeah, that's pretty damn cool. The bass riff, well, there's a number of bass riffs in Needy Girl, but the slap bass of a bam ba dum bam, bow ba dum bow is the coolest thing in the world. Yeah, and I'm really glad to have that song and to be able to talk about it with Dad, because he always likes to compare it to the 1980s stuff, the stuff that he listened to back in the 80s, because Chromeo was very influenced by the 80s. But also, in the way that this links back to Larry Williams, the music of the 80s was very much influenced by the 50s. And so you have this pop, kind of electro-inspired music, synth-inspired music of the 80s, referencing back to their influences from the 1950s when they were growing up. But then Chromeo are referencing back to the 80s, back to the 50s. And there's just so much going on in terms of musical influences, and it's just dense and brilliant. And yeah, and I love it very much.
That's great.
Yeah,
that was really fun, and I'm glad. I remember you mentioning that how much you love Chromeo, and I've not really delved into them too much, but you can't not. I couldn't stop moving my head listening to that song and just bopping and smiling. Yeah, that's a lot of fun.
Well, if you want to hear me talk about Chromeo more, and when I say talk, I mean not shut up about Chromeo, then listen to Dave's episode of his upcoming podcast in maybe the next 3 years.
Could
where be. Yes, yeah,
2024.
Yeah, we're coming for it. We debut at the same year
launch.
as the next World Cup, and then we'll.
Yeah, maybe we can bring back Who Watches the World Cup for that too.
Now that is a podcast. If you people haven't listened to Who Watches the World Cup, it was mine and Dave's World Cup 2018. I guess it was 2018.
Yeah, Russia 2018.
Yeah, Russia 2018. Me and Dave talking about football and then comparing it to the national politics of the teams that are in the World Cup. That's a podcast, right there.
That's the banger. Yeah, that's. I do often go back and re-listen. I'll be honest. I fast forward all my bits, and I just like to hear you speak.
God, that's too complimentary. But to be honest, I do the same thing. So, Dave, that's not true. But Dave, what is your next pick?
My third and final pick, to bring us back down to earth, with somber reflection and spiritual exploration and such fun things, is I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For by U2.
I have climbed highest mountain
Another fade out.
Another classy fade out.
That's not the only link between these songs. The classy fade out.
Oh well, tell us then, Dave. Tell us why you picked this one and what links the songs.
Well, not so much of a link. The link. There is a link between this one and Silver Thunderbird by Mark Cohn in that they were the only real kind of music that I heard in the house growing up. My parents, a lot like you two actually, and I'll get into it in a bit more detail, but they were Christian, and especially when I was young, quite fervent in their faith. So in the house, if it wasn't worship music being played on the stereo, it was Mark Cohn or U2 or this kind of Celtic group called Iona, who would do very like Celtic. I don't want to say what's the word? Very like sort of spiritual, wafy kind of music that you can really imagine in like being carried on the winds of like the Scottish Isles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So there wasn't any funk in my house, certainly, or rock and roll, or even really any pop music or popular radio. So again, these are the kind of things that when I hear them, they take me straight back to that time in my childhood and seeing my dad in the kitchen or whatever, like throwing his hands in the air, bellowing out the lyrics to U2 songs. And it took me a while to narrow this down because U2 was the first thing that came to my mind when I'm thinking about songs that remind me of my dad. But I don't listen to U2 much. I know a lot of their songs from childhood, and they've had some hits here and there. So when I was going through the back catalogue, trying to pick out all the songs that I knew, I noticed that they all mostly came from one album, which was the Joshua Tree album. Which so like the first 3 tracks of the Joshua Tree album are basically the 3 U2 songs that I know the most, with the exception of Sunday Bloody Sunday, which it was probably the biggest hit that I could think of. So the first track is Where the Streets Have No Name. Then it goes track 2, I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For. Then track 3, With or Without You. And those are all, with Sunday Bloody Sunday, those were the 4 songs that really struck me with my dad. And then what else was interesting was that album, the Joshua Tree album, came out in 1987, the year that I was born. So whoa. I don't know if there's any kind of connection there that I can smash together, but I still haven't found what I'm looking for. I chose this one because in reading about them, this one drew a lot of parallels from what the band have spoken about it, and I think in the content of the lyrics, with my dad's own sort of faith and spiritual journey. And it's something interesting about the sort of the doubt that comes across in the song, in the lyrics, but also this very strong message of faith. And he makes constant references to Jesus and I believe in kingdom come and stuff. So he's clearly not trying to hide the fact that that's his faith and that how Christian they are and how that comes across in their music. And thinking about it, it's surprising that they became so huge when they have such obvious Christian undertones in a lot of their hit songs. I know they did a lot of kind of political stuff too with Northern Ireland, and some of the other tracks that I mentioned, like Where the Streets Have No Name and stuff, are quite...
Sunday Bloody Sunday.
Sunday Bloody Sunday, I mean, of course. But yet some of the stuff that mentions carrying the cross and all that stuff can still get radio play. I can't really imagine that happening now. But my dad's had an interesting spiritual journey in that he went from being very devout, and we go to church every Sunday, and there wasn't really much room for wiggle or questions there. And then I think that my parents both started to kind of raise questions about how they were conducting their faith. And it's something that Bono said about faith when talking about the song, where he said it's tragic that faith has been turned into an industry. And I think part of my parents' relationship with the church was about, kind of fell apart because of that. It became about money, and it became about hierarchy, and it became about rules, when for them faith was supposed to be about freedom and about love and a connection. So they fell away from church, but probably became more spiritual and more invested in their relationship with God and stuff because of because they broke away from the structures and the scaffolding that kind of the church was. So this song came to me just as a memory, and then in delving into it deeper, it kind of made a lot of sense. And I wonder how much my dad thought about that at that time, like in the late 80s, early 90s when I was young. And I can remember hearing this in the house, whether it was just a good song that he liked by a band that he liked, or whether he thought, I still haven't found what I'm looking for yet either, to be honest. And then my parents went and broke away and looked for that. So yeah, again, we have a very vast contrast between our relationships with our music and our dads, I think. But I do value this one, because I don't think me and my dad listen to any of the same music now. I remember I did once make him a Snow Patrol mix CD because he heard some of their songs and liked them. And I was like, yes, finally something that me as 15 was like, yes, I like Snow Patrol, my dad likes Snow Patrol, here's all their best songs, you have to like all these songs. But yeah, besides that, we haven't really connected on music much, so these things are all just evocative in me and not really shared. And I wonder if he has any idea what kind of music I like. Who knows?
I think, with U2 in general, U2 have kind of always been a not a point of contention with me and my dad, but I'm not a U2 fan for sure. Like the songs that you mentioned before off Joshua Tree, they're classic songs for what they are. But I would never choose to put on a U2 album. If someone was like, "Oh, let's listen to U2," I'd be like, "I'm alright." But
I've not heard. I don't think I've listened to these songs since I was a kid, or if they happen to come on. They play Wave 105 in my office, so occasionally a U2 song comes on there. But otherwise, I've not heard them since.
Yeah, but listening through to that song from start to finish, for the sake of actually listening to it, it is a great song. And that's one of the arguments me and my dad used to have. I'd be like, "Oh God, U2, really?" And Dad would be like, "That's what I used to think. But if you actually listen to it, you'll find that." I'm like, "No, Dad. No, I'm not going to." But it is a great song. There's something similar to Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For to Ain't No Mountain High Enough by Diana Ross. The Diana Ross version rather than the Marvin Gaye version. Because one of the things that I love about Ain't No Mountain High Enough, which is it's not one of a dad song, but it's a personal favourite song, is that Ain't No Mountain High Enough constantly builds to this crescendo that never happens. And there is this constant tension throughout Ain't No Mountain High Enough where it's waiting to explode. And you can feel it's like Diana Ross is going to really let go in a minute. And when she does, it's gonna fill the room. But the whole song is kind of containing this energy like a rocket ship. And it's like just holding it. And there's something about Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For, which I think has that similar element to it. Because listening to that song, I'm thinking, the Edge is going to come in a minute. And when he does, he's going to let out a rip-roaring, But it doesn't happen. The song just keeps going and going. And it's about... You can feel that same kind of tension within the song of... I think as well is Bono's voice and the lyrics as well. Keep that there. But if it broke, it would lose... If it broke and then there was a guitar solo or something like that, it would lose what you're saying. I think what you're saying, the tension in it is also that spiritual tension that he's feeling. That doubting element of, if the Edge suddenly did an amazing guitar solo, they'd have found what they're looking for, and
That's
the
exactly
song,
what I was gonna say,
the song would be finished. So yeah, there's some real artistry in that song.
It is, yeah. It's nicely crafted, and I'm sorry it does exist all the time, but this is one of those songs where the meaning behind the song is reflected in the craft of it and how it's put together. and it matters
Yeah.
how, and they didn't just come up with the best sounding instrumentals and then the catchiest lyrics and smash them together. I hope that they had the same process that you were just describing there, where they knew they couldn't build to a crescendo, they couldn't let it explode, because that's not what the song is about. It's about doubt, and it's about searching and knowing that search is ongoing. But there is a really cool version of this from the Rattle and Hum documentary, which you can find on YouTube. But they do a version of this song. They perform it at a church in Harlem. And in the little clip that I watched, The Edge describes how they were shown a video of a Harlem church choir covering this in one of their services. So they head out there and they do like a collaboration, which they film with this documentary. So it's just all the choir are sat in the pews of this little church in Harlem, obviously mostly African American, and very gospel orientated kind of sound, and begins with, it's just Bono and the Edge at the front. Edge is just doing that twinkly guitar sound, and I think the drummer Larry is playing a sort of a gentle beat on the bongos, and it just starts with Bono doing the first couple of verses, and then when the chorus comes in, the choir not arise, but they pipe up, and that great gospel choir sound comes out, and they have a bit of a repartee where the choruses and the verses go back and forth between the choir and Bono, and then it gets to a point, I don't know if this was planned, but if you watch the video, at one point the Edge just stops playing. He just takes his guitar off and he's just listening to the choir, and they all just stand there and sort of clap, and the choir kind of take over, and it doesn't change the structure of the song, but the energy changes of it, and it goes from being one man's lament and his struggles with his faith to being quite an uplifting spiritual song, especially when it goes to the I believe in kingdom come stuff. Like the choir just come to life, and it's quite touching and uplifting, and I've left that life behind a long time ago, but there's something undeniable about the energy of a choir and the way it's sung, and if the people who are singing it have that faith and that belief, it gives it this amazing sort of fire and energy that just it can completely change how you feel about a song. And I recommend anyone to go check that out. It's a good 5 minutes well spent.
That's a very beautiful discussion about spirituality and faith, and
that you're about to
expressing
ruin
it
with
through music. I am about to ruin it in the worst way you could possibly imagine.
I can't wait.
Next up on Radio Daddy Issues is Feel Good Hit of the Summer by Queens of the Stone Age.
Queens of the Stone Age, amazing. I'm just excited that I get to listen to this song again. What a song.
Amazing song. That song just fucking rocks.
It rocks hard.
It does rock hard. Nicotine, Valium, Vicodin, marijuana, ecstasy and alcohol, and cocaine.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. A big departure from Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For.
But, and Chromeo for that matter.
This is true. This is more of a reference certainly to my stepdad than to my dad. With some very specific memories attached to it, because Feel Good Hit of the Summer is, I think, the opening track on Rated R, the album Rated R. It was a toss-up really between this song and The Lost Art of Keeping a Secret, which is the track that follows up. For this time period, living with my stepdad, but I went for this one for kind of its defining quality, which is that it's one of those songs that if it had been released in the 1970s would never have been allowed to air, ever. It's the kind of song that is rated R, as the album says, and that I'm pretty sure when when radio companies were like, oh, we can't play this. Why, what are Queens of the Stone Age doing? Don't they know that kids can't listen to music like this? They said, well, the album is called Rated R, right? like we haven't bothered to rate it. It's the name of the album. But for me, it's the year 2000, maybe the beginning of 2001, and my brother has just been born, and me, my stepdad, and my mum we've moved from the small cottage where we lived before my brother was born into a much bigger house, and the house is twice as big as any of the places that we've ever lived before because we need an extra bedroom for my brother. And I have a lot of memories of this house, of it being summertime. There was a big garden that we suddenly had before. Our garden was like literally the back of the house. There was a 1 meter squared concrete block where my parents could go and smoke, and that was it. But this reminds me of this house, and I have a lot of memories attached to that house. It was where I lived when 9/11 happened, and it was like, which is not a dissimilar time to when this album is kind of coming out. And it's just one of those songs that pulls me back to that house and to that time period where my brother has just been born. We've moved into this big house because it's what my stepdad would be playing in the car, especially in the car. So around this time where we're going on holiday, or whether we're just, driving around, because we lived in a village, if you wanted to go shopping to a supermarket, you'd have to drive 35 minutes, something like that. So there's lots of music being played. Like, I could have gone for Ace of Spades by Motorhead. Could also have been this track, from that kind of time period. But I went for this one specifically for another memory I have, which is a few years later, where I'm listening to Queens of the Stone Age myself, but I'm still like, 13 or 14, something like that. But I'm not listening to Rated R as much. I'm listening to Songs of the Deaf, which is the album that comes after this one. And me and my stepdad are driving in the car, and Feel Good Hit of the Summer comes on, and we're kind of singing along, as you do with a child that's been singing about nicotine and Valium and Vicodin since they were 9 or 10. And then I remember saying to my stepdad, is this a song about everything that they think is bad? And my stepdad kind of looking at me like, are you an idiot? But then saying, no, this is a song about everything that they want to do. I was like, whoa. That for me was like
people can say that.
Yeah, this was a mind-bending moment, because we've always listened to punk music. Like, as I said, I grew up on the Ramones and the Clash, and these are bands that are still very much my favorites now. But that moment of, we can talk about drugs as a positive thing if we want to, was like, I just genuinely can't believe this. What are you talking about? And it was a moment of that naivety almost being washed away. Because again, we're big Foo Fighters fans in our house, but when you talk about Dave Grohl as a rock god and a rock legend, he does drums on Songs for the Deaf and stuff like that as well. But Dave Grohl has always been like a straight man, right? He's not a partying, drugs and until he passes out kind of guy. He's a professional, like a music professional. Whereas you go across to Josh Homme and especially in Queens of the Stone Age at this time, you've got Nick Olivieri on bass, like one of the defining bassists of the early 2000s, just a real fucking bastard. But he looks awesome, and he's a great bassist, and he's just a horrible guy who they kicked out of Queens of the Stone Age basically for constantly being on nicotine, Valium, Vicodin, and marijuana, ecstasy, and alcohol, and cocaine, and then just, I think, abusing his girlfriend or his partner, and just that rock and roll life took over. And the way I feel about the song now has kind of changed, almost back to what I originally thought when I was younger, where the song is almost a warning in a way, I think. Not to say that these things are bad, but you look at the trajectory and the careers, especially of someone like Nicola Vieri, is we live the life that is as hardcore as this song is, right? It's the feel-good hit of the summer, because this is what we do during the summer, right? When the sun is out and you're in the desert, because all the Queens of the Stone Age albums feel like they're being played in the desert.
Yeah, desert rock is like their
Yeah.
sort of the sole proprietors of that genre.
Yes, yeah. And it comes to me now more as, at the very end of the song, you get the final cocaine, and then just a ugh at the end of the song that Josh Homme does. Is this like a come down moment? And to me, that's like the warning. The warning of the song is like, you can live like this, but if you do, you'll end up like Nicola Vieri, and you'll be out of the band, and you'll be kind of ashamed in your own way. And yeah, it comes with a cost. The feel good hit comes with the cost.
So did you take it that way when you were first hearing it? Did you take it as a, or do you take it as these guys are all talking about this stuff and this is their lifestyle, but I wouldn't ever do that? Or are you taking it to be like, wow, this is kind of cool that they're even talking about it? Were you ever sort of tempted into that, thinking that was something you wanted to?
No, I don't think because I listened to it first off when I was so young, when it first came out. Yeah. I didn't think anything about the lyrics at all. In fact, I probably couldn't have told you any of the words that they were saying. When when it first, I as you were saying, you said when we listened to, I had to look up the lyrics for this the other day, even though they only say like 7 words.
Yeah.
You at the time I couldn't have told like what, I didn't know what Valium or Vicodin was. It was just like the phonics sounds of Valium, or yeah. And so, but they say it fast, they say it crisp, they say it loud. Like it's not. But there's that kind of slurring going on as the song goes on. The lyrics become more slurred, as if the effects of these drugs are on the vocalists themselves. But I think I didn't take it as, this is something that I really want to go and do now. I've never had that.
Yeah, just like in the way that people look up to their rock gods and think they're the coolest. They're the coolest that can be. That there is no one cooler than a rock god.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of lifestyle you want to live, and you want to dress like them and treat people the way they treat them. And often the people who do that misguidedly are the ones who have no talent to back it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which these guys do.
Yeah.
I wanted to I like the story. I'm quite envious of you in that you had two father figures who both imparted on you what I would consider to be a good taste in music. It was varied and had great historical breadth, and I think that I can imagine you being taught what that historical context was about with punk with your stepdad and with like 50s rock and roll with your dad, and I am envious of that, because all music besides what I told you about with like U2 or Christian worship music, all music that I ever came to I had to find on my own, and they came from friends at school and stuff, and then that kind of leads you down all these paths that you travel. But my dad's relationship with what you might call like youth music in like the 90s and the 2000s was the complete opposite. I remember when I was in my teens, my brother is 3 years younger than me. He got into hip hop at that stage way before I ever did. I was still in sort of the skate rock, pop punk, some more just sort of straight rock kind of stuff at that point. Some more rappier things, but in terms of like proper hip hop, my brother was delving into the back catalogue and the history of it way before I was. But he hid it from our dad. So my brother was listening to NWA specifically, and he had a CD that a friend had given him, and he hid it under his bed. And one day my dad found it, and that led to a stern talking to when my dad read the track listing on the back of the CD. And I know
that's not going to go well.
No, and I know that I've mentioned that my dad used to be a policeman, so
Yes.
and
Yes.
and this might be an embarrassing story that he might not like me telling, but he won't ever listen to this. So,
Gossip.
yeah, we've all got to live with our embarrassing histories.
Yes, this is true.
So he sits Connor down and he reads the track list and is like, points to one in particular and goes, "F the police." How do you think that makes me feel?
Yeah.
And now me and Connor talk about that and we find it really funny. But at that time, my dad was actually upset by that.
Yeah.
He was upset that his son was listening to a bunch of people encouraging to, at the very least, dismiss the police, distrust the police, and perhaps even be violent towards the police. But I think the way that he was raised was also, he wasn't even, I don't think, aware of the popular music of his own age. His parents were even more strictly governed what him and his brothers were allowed in terms of music and popular culture. I know he didn't really watch many films when he was young, and the only music that I know that he likes from the 70s when he was growing up is ELO, and I've never heard him talk about anybody else. So I think having no experience of understanding the contemporary culture just carried on as he got into his 20s and 30s, and then he's not going to understand what what West Coast hip hop is about.
Yeah.
Like that's not gonna communicate with him. But I do remember being on car trips with the whole family on holidays, and for a short period he would let me and my brother choose the music in the car, and we end up putting on the music that we liked. And so at that point, I think me and Connor were both into Linkin Park, so I think Hybrid Theory got a few spins,
Nice.
and I'm sure my parents did not understand it whatsoever. And I think I'm trying to think of a particular album that I put on that when I think about it now, and I remember being in the car and being that age and putting it on for the whole car and the whole family to hear, I cringe.
Yes.
I'm just like, why would I think this was a good idea? And I'm struggling to think of what it was now. What could it have been, that sort of era? I guess I would have been. It's probably around 2000, early 2000s. What kind of music was I listening to? Maybe. Later on, I think Placebo, Sleeping with Ghosts was one I put on in the car, which is kind of weird and haunting. It has some good like rock tracks on it too, but yeah, I'm sure my parents were like, I'm not so sure what this is about. So well, yeah, I'm kind of envious. On the one hand, I'm envious that I didn't have that education from a young age, but then I'm also quite glad of the way that I had to find music in my own way, and how fortunate I am to have bumped into people and friends along the way who introduced me to stuff, and that's probably why I've ended up being quite eclectic in my tastes.
Well, I think that's a perfect discussion of music and fathers and family to leave it on. There.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's great.
Well, can I just ask you one question?
Yeah.
What's the last song you was the last song you heard that was put on by your dad or your stepdad around you?
Oh, I mean, we were getting drunk and listening to music last night.
Oh, what are you listening to?
So it's one of those ones where we each kind of pick a track, or we have the record player, so we'll put a vinyl on.
Oh, nice.
But the family album in this house with my mum and my stepdad and my brother, the family album is Blackout by the Dropkick Murphys. That's our family.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. It's so unfair.
Each track on there is has a specific family meaning. The titular track Blackout is one that I performed for my GCSE music solo performance on bass, and I got an A for that. Thank you very much.
Of course, I'm not surprised.
Yeah. And then what's the track called? There's a duet track at the end. I think is it The Empty Bottle? Let me have a look. Empty Glass. From that album. Is a duet about a couple that have fallen in love, well, had fallen in love and now hate each other. and one of them, the female in the duet, runs a bar, and my mum and my stepdad performed that at a gig that they did together. They both did Empty Glass. They did the back and forth. So anytime that comes on, they duet it together in the car, and the whole album is just an anthem for the family. So yeah, that's
awesome.
that's the big one for us. What about you?
That's really cool. I don't know. I think we don't have anything such as that because my parents' music tastes have separated. I think quite a bit. I think my mum went through a phase, maybe 10 years or so ago, where she really wanted to expand her musical horizons. She was always coming to me for suggestions and even of like a genre. It's like, I've heard of this trip hop. Can you just make me a CD of some stuff? So I really enjoyed that thing. Whereas my dad is, I'm not really sure what he actually sits down and listens to now. I've walked into the kitchen at his house and there's been opera playing. I think maybe he's going in a slightly more upper, like high class direction now. So maybe he's trying to get all cultured. Whereas my mum is just likes a bit of everything. She likes a bit of folk, and actually speaking of going, this is a bit of a hark back to earlier on, but going through my parents' music and seeing what stuff I liked. With my dad, I found Mark Cohn and didn't really get on with U2. He had Dire Straits as well, which I didn't really get along with. Van Morrison, didn't really speak to me at that age. But my one I always nicked from my mum was Lauryn Hill, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill.
Yeah.
And now, I remembered bits and pieces of it, and it was only a couple of years ago where I just kind of remembered that album existed and listened through to it. And I was like, this is such a great album. Like, she was so amazing. I love this album. And just it makes me think about how cool my mum was to be. Like, when I think that must have come out in the mid-90s, and she like probably went out and bought it then and listened to it then. I was like, yes, mum.
Yeah.
Great shout.
Those are some great selections.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I think we there's a good place to round it off for this episode. I really enjoyed this one. Something a little bit different, and some great choices. To go through the playlist that we've created, the Daddy Issues playlist number 1, because I think we'll come back and revisit this idea again. The first track we had was Wonder Boy by the Kinks. Track 2 was Boney Maroney by Larry Williams. Track 3 is Silver Thunderbird by Mark Cohn. Track 4 is Needy Girl by Chromeo. Track 5 is Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For by U2. And coming in with a hot, powerful ending, track 6, Feel Good Hit of the Summer by Queens of the Stone Age.
That's a great playlist.
It's a good selection. I like that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys very much for listening. Let us know what you think of the playlist, and if you have any songs that connect you with your parents, then please leave them in the comments below. If you have any suggestions of things to do on Daddy Issues next time, maybe this is the first track that you've the first episode that you've listened to because you just love Silver Thunderbird and I put it in the tags and you found it that way. Leave a suggestion of what you'd like us to do in the future, and we will. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
He's waving.
Cocaine. Don't edit that in.